Can you explain nearly 14 billion years of history in 20 minutes? Only if you have an intelligent audience, which we clearly have, and a very talented storyteller, which we also have with us today. He is a historian, a journalist, a writer, and a bit of a quirky guy. He now also has books about the universe, sports, science, nature, and Shakespeare. His primer of history has been described as a giant narrative leap across time and space, one seismic change at a time. Making learning fun, interesting, and certainly fresh, please welcome Christopher Lloyd.
Thank you. Thank you very much. That's a wonderful introduction. So that means that all that's standing between you and your lunch is 14 billion years of the history of the universe. That's the bad news. The good news is there's a counter here that's going from 20 minutes down to 0, and when it gets to 0, there's a trapdoor here, and I disappear. So anyway, yes, so it's a couple of minutes I will indulge as an introduction, and then we'll get stuck in. I specialize in something that not very many people do, I think, which is in zooming out and trying to connect things together. And actually, it's amazing when you experience the whole day here at PINC how many connections you will make. And I'm already making in my mind. You know, Alex told us, take one step back, and it's like taking 2 steps forward. And sometimes I think that's absolutely right. So in our modern culture, everything's divided up into little fragments, and everyone's a specialist, and that's fantastic. If it weren't for that, we wouldn't be here. But at the same time, I think it's so important to try and take a step back and see how it all fits together. And my own journey really began with my eldest daughter when she was 7. She got bored at school. And basically, to cut a long story short, we home educated for 5 years. And I learned firsthand then as a parent how the brain naturally wants to learn by connecting things together. And when we impose on young people timetables and syllabuses and school bells and all these horrific things that chop knowledge up into little pieces, then the one thing that can't happen is that curiosity cannot flow. And if curiosity can't flow, then you're not using your natural learning system. And she was interested in penguins. And so we learned everything at the age of 7 or 8 through penguins. We could do our maths because they were in different groups, and we did ratios. And then one penguin left one group and went to another group. She said, why did it leave the group? So I said, I don't know. Why didn't it write a story? Maybe it was bullied. So he writes a story. And then we do our maths. We learn about Antarctica, and we find out that it used to be on the equator, by the way, 250 million years ago. That's rather amazing. The whole world's built up of these giant jigsaw puzzle pieces. And then we discover this great stuff, ice, and we go to the fridge and we heat it up and it turns to water, and we measure the temperature, and then we heat it up, go to the kettle and we find the steam. And that's great. We do stories about ice. There was a ship that left England about 100 years ago, and they said it would never sink. And this is a story about arrogance, and she hadn't really come across arrogance, so we talk about arrogance for a while. And we find all sorts of examples of arrogance in the world around us and in history. That's a good theme. And anyway, it strikes this iceberg. That's the connection with the penguins, because the ice, and then it sinks. 1,517 people die. And we do some more maths because there wasn't enough room in the lifeboats, etc. So I hope you get the idea that when you connect things together, amazing things can happen. So I wanted to find a book that would connect everything together for me. I went into a bookshop and I asked for a history of the world, and they sent me one way to the science section, and that was all about nature. But when I got to people, it stopped. And they sent me to the other area, a history of the world written by a historian. It's all about people starting in Mesopotamia 7,000 years ago, as if nothing else had happened. Even a history of the world, there's this great big kind of tectonic plate that divides things up. So I thought, why don't I try and write a book from the beginning of time, 14 billion years or so ago to the present day. And the question I asked myself to help me out on the journey was this. It's called What on Earth Happened? And so we go through in 42 chapters, which you may know is the meaning of life, all the way through from the beginning of time to the present day. And I discovered as I was doing this that not everybody likes to read giant long books. And it's not always the best way to tell a big story. So I started researching how people told stories before they could read and write, and the best way of doing it. Actually, Karen, you know, I'm going to need you on the stage the whole time, I've decided now. If you could but just help me out here, that would be fantastic. Yeah, that's great. So I realized that the most natural way, perhaps, of connecting things together is to use pictures and captions. You're on this side. Thank you very much. You take this end here, if that's OK. I'll take this end. So I made a timeline, which took me a little while to do, and I took my book and I made 1,000 moments in history, and I go all the way from the beginning of time to the present day with the dates at the bottom and all the chapters you can see at once. In fact, hopefully, have we got a couple of volunteers to roll out the big one? Is there anybody here? Oh, a couple of volunteers from the house here. Excellent. Yes, I need 2 people. Go a bit quickly. 1, thank you very much. And if you can find another one, please, Karen. We have 2. OK, you just have to hold this up here. So this is the big one. OK, Karen, you're there on one side. This one, hopefully, is one you might be able to see. Keep going, keep going.
Can we get it?
Yeah, you can, if you unfold that. Can you do that? And just keep going. Good luck. Okay. Terrific. Right. That's a bit better. Oh, is it split in the middle? Oh, doesn't matter. Keep going. Great. That is. I hope you can see that one a little bit better. Great. Fantastic. So I'm going to use this to help us go through our journey. All the chapters you can see at once, which is great, because in a normal book you have to go one at a time. And we've got space, earth, sky, sea, land, the Stone Ages, the Far East, the Middle East. This is Europe here, America's in green, Africa at the bottom, and a little bit at the bottom here is called Australia, where we've got some rabbits, an opera house, and a test match, so they feel included in the story. It's quite important to be inclusive as you can. Anyway, and all the dates are at the bottom, and what I discovered was this is a great way of connecting things together, because if you, for example, take a date like 1520, Alex, is Alex here? Who was on the throne of England in 1520? I don't know who he is. I'm thinking he's a Brit. He might know. 1520, guy who had 6 wives. Do you know what I mean? Henry VIII, right. So we look forward to Henry VIII. There he is. It's 1520. At the same time, Henry VIII's on the throne, by the way. They're building the Great Wall of China in Asia here. Columbus has discovered the Americas. Luther's fed up with the Pope. They're building Machu Picchu down in Peru. They're building Great Zimbabwe in Africa. The Turks have seized Constantinople. And an astronomer called Copernicus, nicknamed Copernicus, easy to remember, has discovered the Earth is going around the sun. And it's, guess what, all happening at about the same time. So this makes me realize that when you reorganize information in a way that allows curiosity to flow, you don't have to start at the beginning and the end, and young people can take their own journeys through time. Okay, I think what we'll do is we'll roll that up or just take that off. That's fine. Thank you very much indeed to my lovely volunteers who've done that. So, oh, wow, I've still got 15 minutes to do the whole history of the world. That's great. Okay, so the timeline is useful, but the one other technique that I've discovered which to help me through the journey is to divide up the story, rather like you would as an author, into chapters, into key moments. And for each key moment in our journey through the history of the universe, I've chosen an everyday object, and I've rather stolen this from the world of ancient Greece, where people didn't write things down because they didn't have pen and paper, and they used mnemonics, visual objects, to remind them of what they're going to say. And so I've chosen 20 everyday objects. These are things you could find in a kitchen cupboard, probably. And they link in some way to the 20 most amazing moments in my story of the history of the world, according to me, okay, because I'm the storyteller here. So you can come up with your own list and you can challenge me whenever you like as to say, why haven't you got this, that, and the other? But there are 20 moments, okay? Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to, where's Karen gone? I said she had to be up here on the stage. Honestly, just don't take instruction. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to ask Karen to pick my pockets. We have to sort of go a little bit faster than I'd like to because the trapdoor opens in 13 minutes' time. And we're going to go from the Big Bang to the present day in 20 everyday objects. And well, try and explain what the links are. Okay, are we ready? Ready, steady, go. Pocket number 1, right. No, hang on, it's the one with the 1 on it. Okay, good. Karen, what have you got?
A balloon.
Would you please blow up the balloon? Fantastic, okay. She's going to blow and put a little knot in the end of it. Okay, that's lovely. I've chosen the balloon because, of course, the story starts with the Big Bang at the beginning of time. Keep going. Is that okay? That's not... Oh, Karen? Okay, so you just stay there. Hopefully. And the universe begins with a Big Bang, and the universe inflates like a balloon, billions of miles wide in less than a second, which is pretty astonishing. And if you look at the stars at night, actually, we're like inside this giant big balloon that keeps on expanding forever. So a balloon is not a bad model, really, perhaps, for explaining what the universe is actually like. And one of the first people to put this together, this idea, or provide proof for it, is Edwin Hubble, an American astronomer in the 1930s. You'll find him on the timeline. And he looks through his telescope, and the first person to notice through his telescope, if you could hold the universe here, please, Karen, is that all the galaxies you can see are kind of moving away from each other. And so the only explanation that he could come up with, really, was that this is proof that the universe began with a Big Bang, that forced them all outwards. And he calculated how long ago they were all together, 13.7 billion years, the start of our story. So I chose an object, the balloon, to remind me that we're going to start off with a Big Bang. There is a difference between the balloon and the Big Bang, of course. You may have got this already, because the Big Bang starts with a huge explosion, and then the universe inflates like a balloon. But a balloon, what happens is you open it up, it's only after you blow it up that you get a Big Bang. How are you, Karen? Okay, still smiling? That's great, very good. I was a bit worried, actually, because I forgot to bring my pin all the way from the UK, and then somebody came along with a piece of cheese, which was very helpful. So we'll put that there as my next object, so thank goodness for that, my lucky stars. So, pocket number 2, Karen? Pocket number 2.
I think it's over here.
What you need to do is you need to be thinking in advance, okay?
Oh,
so
I see.
You get number 2,
okay.
And now you need to start, maybe he's going to ask me about number 3. Okay, what's this?
It is a ball.
It's a ball, okay?
A beach ball.
No, it's not. Well okay. It's got this kind of, can anybody help Karen out? What have we got here? It's a globe. Okay, good, it's a globe. So, Quite important moment number 2. 4.6 billion years ago, we've gone through 8 billion years of the history of the world, history of the universe already. We get the world. And I was very tempted when I was filling out my visa waiver card thing, you know, and then immigration said, what's the purpose of your visit to the United States? I was very keen to say, I'm going to blow up the world. But actually, I'm not going to do that. Because I thought probably there's a sense of humor deficit with some of those guys. I don't know if you've noticed. However, so we got the world. Thank goodness for that. OK, something else. Something happens on this planet Earth. Very important. Karen, pocket number 3.
Over
yes.
here. I found it.
You found it. Great, good, good. What have we got? The most amazing object. It is.
A glass bottle.
Oh, it's a glass bottle. A glass bottle, a glass jar. Anything in the jar?
No.
An empty glass jar. Isn't it amazing how something like an empty glass jar can be so exciting? It's number 3 in my moments on the history of the world. It's not an empty glass jar, is it? What's in the jar? Air. OK, I'm not trying to sort of humiliate you too much. Anyway, there's air. And in fact, it was David this morning. Thank you very much. I'm trying to link things together a little bit here. It's the oxygen in the air. Without it, we'd all be dead within 3 minutes. And most of it comes from the bacteria in the sea. And the bacteria is the first form of life. So we have life on Earth, which makes this planet different from any other planet that is known of. Anyway, so that's a very important deal. Pocket number 3. Pocket number 4 takes us through this journey of life on Earth. Good, you've got the hang of this. OK, there's 2 bits. What have you got, Karen?
Fossils.
Yes, very good. Fossils, right. So this is a fossil of a creature. And again, I want to thank David because he sort of brought this together for me this morning. A creature that lived, first it emerges about 536 million years ago. It's a trilobite, as you may know, like a beetle-like creature. But it is thought to be the first creature in the history of life on Earth that had eyes and could see. Before that, you know, if you needed food, it's a kind of game of chance, luck as to whether it would come your way or not. But the beginning of active predation, where a trilobite can actually hunt out things in the oceans for itself because it can see, changes everything. And of course, it means that worms have to bury themselves in the ground to survive. It means that those wonderful octopuses need to have camouflage to survive, because it only exists because of eyesight, if you think about it. And there's this massive kind of diversification of living things called the Cambrian explosion, where you get bones, shells, and teeth, and all these types of devices for survival as a result of eyesight. So I have to have that there as my number 4. As life changes dramatically, the rules for survival have changed because of eyesight. We move onto the land now. Pocket number 5, about 450 million years ago. The descendants of ancient seaweeds over about 50 million years adapt to being able to live on the land. This is the coolest adaptation of all. Wow, look at that, a piece of wood. Brilliant. OK, so a piece of wood means that if you're a plant living on the land, you need to be nice and tall to get to the sunlight. But if you're very tall and it's windy on the land, no, very good if you get blown over. So you need to have a nice strong stem. Over millions of years, it turns into wood. And to get the water, the roots dig down into the rock, turn the rock into soil, and we've got a whole new ecosystem from about 450 million years ago. And in the seas, it's getting competitive. You've got all these kind of different sharks and jellyfish and all sorts of sea scorpions. So actually, some creatures think maybe it's a good idea to come out onto the land, see what happens. And we get the first vertebrate creatures that do this, the related to fish, the amphibians. But by about 300 million years ago, 253, 300 million years ago, there's a bit of a problem. I need my timeline here. Oh my gosh, okay, here we go. Because by then, Karen, you're over there, I'm over here, the world looks roughly like this, which is different from the way the world looks today. I don't know if any of you can see it, but we already talked about it this morning. It's Pangea, when the whole continent, all the continents are collided together. There's much less coastline, by the way, in a world with only one continent. So if creatures like amphibians need to go and lay their eggs, they all have to live by the coast. It's very dry inland. And of course, if you're laying all your eggs in the water there and all the other creatures are living there, then the chances are your eggs are going to get eaten, which isn't very good. So, Karen, you come up with an amazing strategy, which is pocket number 6. To be able to give birth inland, it is...
An egg?
An egg, fantastic, yes indeed. The egg comes before the chicken by about 300 million years, just so you know. And the egg, what is an egg? What is an egg? An egg is a portable ocean. It means Karen doesn't have to go to the water to lay her eggs. She takes all the water she needs to make a Karen and puts it inside the packet. How fantastic. Then she goes to the middle of Pangea, she lays her eggs, sits on it for a while, out hatches a little Karen. And all the other creatures are still living by the coasts. She is now a reptile. She becomes so powerful, her descendants become the dinosaurs 220 million years ago to 65 million years ago. They get wiped out, apparently, by an amazing meteorite, 17,000 miles an hour, 6 miles wide, smashes into the world, ecological catastrophe, and all the dinosaurs get killed. I say that all the dinosaurs get killed. Pocket number 7, Karen, very good indeed. What have we got? Our little exhibit is a little bird. Why have I got a bird at this moment? Because for a long time, scientists didn't really know what birds were, so they called them birds. Anyway, they now know they're not really birds, they're dinosaurs, same family as T-Rex. T-Rexes had feathers, their cousins took to the skies with their feathers. And because they could fly, they could find little niches and they survived. We've got lots of dinosaurs today. You can have chicken McDinosaur, if you like. It's all chickens are, of course, dinosaurs because they are birds. Birds are the living dinosaurs that we have today. So which group of animals becomes the most important now after the land-living dinosaurs have disappeared? Of course, it's the mammals. And the mammals have an amazing tactic for survival because they don't have to abandon their youngsters in order to feed them because they can fend off any sort of predators. This is in the age of dinosaurs. And they can do that thanks to an extraordinary piece of technology that all mammals have that's literally changed the world, which is why it's in pocket number 8. Very important one here. Thank you very much, Karen. What have we got? If you could exhibit those, please, as best as you can, in front of the whole audience, that would be lovely. There we are. It's a pair of these. Yes, absolutely right. So, and I had to apologize. These ones are getting a little saggy, but that can happen, apparently. But the point is that all mammals make milk, and if it wasn't for that, we wouldn't have survived the age of dinosaurs because you'd have had to abandon your babies to find food and they'd get gobbled up by other creatures. But this is an amazing technology, isn't it? You can now protect your youngsters and only go out at night time to feed yourself when it's safe to do so. 4 minutes left, that's terrible. Okay, right, so we're going to go into the world of an amazing mammal that changed the world because it got up onto 2 feet, and thank you very much indeed, John, for that. You're absolutely right, it changes the world. We have hands. And if it wasn't for that, we wouldn't be able to knit. Okay, so that's why I've got my knitting needles. Very important indeed. And then, using the hands, these creatures, the descendants anyway, start rubbing sticks together and striking flints in order to make fire, which makes them the most powerful creatures in the world because they can cook food so they don't get poisoned, they can scare away the wild animals, etc., etc., etc. And then some of these creatures, this one's over here, thank you very much, Karen, about 50,000 years ago exhibit some amazing cultural things, which is they start cave painting. This is our species of humans now, Homo sapiens, we call ourselves wise. Well, the story of arrogance begins here, I guess, thinking about it. Anyway, cave paintings in Lascaux and Altamira, and these are prayers to the gods, supposedly asking the gods to bring animals so that we can hunt and we don't get food. So the beginning of religion and consciousness in a way that we might recognize today perhaps starts. And then finally in the Stone Ages we have the last thing. I'm going to put my own pocket, I hope you don't mind.
No,
this one, about 10,000 years ago, some pasta. And in order to make pasta, of course, you have to grow wheat. And for 99% of human history, people didn't grow. There were no farmers. It was all barbecues and wild fruit and nuts and moving from place to place, which is why people like still these days doing ultimate running. Just trying to make a few connections. Anyway, so they move from place to place, but then it all changes because of climate change, which is a big deal because what is thought to have happened is that as the glaciers melted, the seas rose. That probably created a crisis of food supply in lots of parts of the world with the animals drowning. And then, so people start using their hands and their brains and they start digging up the ground and they start planting crops and they harvest them all. But the thing is that you have to store your food somewhere, otherwise it goes rotten. So they start building buildings. And then they need to, all their food comes at once, so they need to take them to a market perhaps to buy and sell it. So we go from the Stone Ages to ancient history through climate change. So it's quite important to try and connect these things together into a narrative. So I have 4 objects for ancient history, and I've only got 3 minutes left. Here we go. Writing begins in ancient Iraq. There we are. This makes kings very powerful because they can make laws like Hammurabi and become very frightened of authority. We go to China, where they grow this amazing stuff here called rice. Rice has changed the world because there are more calories in rice than any other crop you can think of, including wheat and barley and all the rest of it. So it feeds more people. It's very difficult to grow because you need to plant each plant individually. You need lots of people, but it will feed lots of people. And even today, there's twice as many people in the ancient rice-growing parts of the world, in China and in Africa and in India, as any other part of the world. So this is the kind of steroids that led to huge population growth, I would suggest to you. Another crop you could find in the kitchen cupboard, of course, are olives, which is the most valuable thing if you lived in ancient Greece. Everybody wanted the oil because you could light lamps, you could it would be used for heating, it would be used for cooking, and you could swap your olives for 2 things to keep yourself in a good style of life. One is lots of wheat grown by the River Nile. The other thing you'd swap your olives for is, of course, slaves. So then you don't need to work in the fields, you don't need to wash up or make a bed. And because they had so many slaves, because they could swap their olives with slaves, they had bags of spare time. Thank you very much. And so what did the Greek people do with their spare time? They invented the Olympic Games and watched people go running again. And they opened the theatre, and they had opened schools of philosophy, and they even invented something where lots of people get involved in choosing their political leaders called democracy. Those are people, of course. You always have to have the slaves in order to qualify. But anyway, hopefully you can begin to see that the connection between the natural world and human culture is really quite a rich and strong one. Final ancient civilization takes us to the Americas. Rather important something you find in the kitchen cupboard here is, of course, I think you call it corn over here. They didn't have any farm animals, the Native Americans. They relied on the crops, and there were terrible droughts, as you may know, from the 8th century onwards in Mexico and places. And they thought they'd upset the rain god because the rain god wasn't bringing any rain. So they did the irrational thing, and this is the frightening thing, it is a rational thing. They thought that they must try and please the rain god. So they would build their pyramids, and they would take children and women up the steps of the pyramids, their most sort of sacred and the things they love most in their society. And on the way up the steps, the priests would rip out the children's fingernails, if you can imagine how horrific that would have been. Why did they do that? They're sending a message to God. What do they want the gods to bring them? Rain. And you can see the tears symbolize the message. They wanted the gods to bring them rain. Are these people mad, or are they desperate? Is there a history of desperation that was sometimes interpreted as being madness, etc.? Even around us today, the same sorts of things. So, my final line, I'm going to be 2 minutes too long. I hope the trapdoor won't open. Modern history is the story of how everything's become connected together. It begins in the world of ancient the Middle East with the life of a very famous man who's most important, I think, in the history of the world and the modern world in particular. His name is the Prophet Muhammad, and he comes up with a way of life called Islam, which becomes so popular that within 100 years of his death, it connects China with Europe, and the Islamic people bring all sorts of things from China to Europe, including this stuff here, which is the most important object, which is paper, invented in China. And the people in Islam realized that when they went to wipe their bottoms, they always traditionally used their left hands, by the way, but this is actually more convenient. And so they bring it all the way over, and Gutenberg, when he makes his printing press, is using some technology invented in China that was actually brought over by Islam. And the other thing they bring over, rather ironically, is this stuff, which is gunpowder. And this was great fun in customs too. Anyway, there we go. So that rather changed the world and became the biggest export of the Western world. But it came from China via Islam via Spain. So all these connections help we realize, I hope, how important the Islamic civilization has been to connecting the world together. So then Columbus goes on his voyage, 1492, of course. He thinks he wants to go to India. It's the biggest mathematical miscalculation in the history of the world, because he thinks it's 3,000 miles, but it's 18,000 miles. He arrives after 3,000 miles. Yay! So he thinks he's in India, so he calls it the West Indies. He calls the people Indians. He goes there 4 times. Every time he thinks he's in India, he dies thinking he's discovered India. People come in after Columbus and they think this isn't India, so they don't know what to call it, so they call it the New World. Some of them get really confused up north and call it Newfoundland, because it's quite a deficit of creativity when you think about it, that name. Anyway, so eventually, after 100 years, 20 million Native Americans have died because of a disease that I'm sure you know, smallpox, that comes from cows, and they didn't have any native farm animals in the Americas, so these people die. So then if you want to set up a farm or something, or plantation, you need lots of people to work on your farm, but all the locals have died, so you need to get people from somewhere else. So they get them from Africa, as you know, and they come over in the slave ships. And some people, as you get the slave trade, some people get very rich as a result. So I got here, and the chocolate also comes from the Americas, so that's why I got a bag of chocolate gold. And then this global out, we've got Africa's connected with America's, connected with Europe, connected with China. You see how it's all coming together. And finally, a piece of technology, pocket number 19 here, invented in Cornwall in 1804, is high-pressure steam. And until then, you need nature in some way to go from one place to another, not if you have a train, because you can just take as many people as good as you like. And, of course, that allowed the European people to take this technology to Africa and slice it up like a melon and take the goods to the coast and bring it back to Europe, which becomes very rich and wealthy, and other parts of the world become very poor as a result. But anyway, high-pressure steam even today gives us still 80% of all our electricity. Even in a nuclear power station, it is basically a big kettle, and the steam drives the turbines. So we are now in the modern world, and my final pocket Karen is for you, just in case you're...
Oh, my goodness.
I know, there we are, pocket number 20. So we can peer into the future with our story. We have...
a pot of gold?
No,
a
no.
witch's brew?
Yes, it's a cauldron. Can you think, Karen, of a Shakespeare play that begins with 3 witches dancing around a cauldron? Oh, no, the humiliation is complete.
Hamlet.
Macbeth. Thank you very much, Larry. Macbeth. So these witches, you were finished now. You can get.
Thank you.
Okay, so these witches now, they dance around and they conjure up 3 spirits from the past that prophesy the future. And my 3 spirits for you to finish our journey is the first one belongs to a man who wrote something in 1848 very powerfully called Karl Marx. He lived in London for a lot of his life. He said the problem of the world is too many rich people, too many poor people, and we keep going through these economic cycles of boom and bust. He wasn't wrong, was he really? Today, there are about 1 billion people who are too poor, and 1 billion people are getting ill from so much food, and we still go through these boom and bust. He wasn't very good at coming up with solutions, though, so if anybody's got any ideas, see me afterwards. The second person coming out, the spirit coming out, belongs to a man who was already mentioned by Alex Thomas Malthus. He said the problems are too many people. Since I arrived in Sarasota yesterday afternoon at 4:30, the number of people, extra people in the world, on top of those that have died, which we'll find on the end of the war book, by the way, is 219,000. every day. You saw a counter when you came into the room today, and you saw the human population ticking up. Nearly 250,000 people are added on top of those that die to the human population every day. What do we do about that? Final spirit comes out of the cauldron, belongs to a man who went around the world in 1832 on HMS Beagle, wrote The Origin of Species. His name, of course, is Charles Darwin. And the reason I mention him is only for this reason, that he said, when you think of people and the story of people, you must remember we are all connected. Everything about everything around us, whether it's knowledge and history or whatever subject it is all about the interconnectedness of things. And if it wasn't for the bacteria with the oxygen, we wouldn't actually be able to breathe, we wouldn't be alive. If it wasn't for the dinosaurs with their amazing eggs, or if it wasn't for some of these crops like olives and maize and smallpox diseases and steam power and all these forces around us shaping the world we're in, when we connect them together, you do see, and thank you again, Alex, for that really lovely phrase, that if you do take the trouble to take one step back, it might take us at least a couple of steps forward. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Fantastic. Thank you.